Hello, welcome live from Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Brian Haenchen, Danny Riego here with you. We're talking Class A girls state basketball. This is the first time actually that we have been together and in person, probably since we recorded the first episodes under a different name.
Yeah, that's right. No, that's right. We're actually in the same room, and so we were like fiddling with the computer. We didn't know like where each other was going to sit. So
yeah, no, we got it perfect. Two really fun games, surprisingly so. Honestly, like if I'm being honest, I wasn't expecting the morning session to be this good.
Yeah.
Lanesville holds off Marquette Catholic 51-43. Bishop Luers 44-36 over Brownstown Central. Let's start with Lanesville, and let's start specifically with what happened at the beginning with Hadley Crozier going down for Lanesville. A lot of different ways to go with it. Obviously, just gutted, absolutely gutted for her, but just amazed and kind of in disbelief with the way that Lanesville responded, both in the moment and down the stretch as well, defensively, offensively. We'll name some specific players, but I'll let you take that one and run with it.
Yeah, so we talked all week about how Hadley Crozier, really was the heartbeat, the battery that charged the Lanesville defense, and offensively, her output was a big reason why they were here. It was heartbreaking. It was heart. I don't know how else to describe it. It was absolutely heartbreaking. Lanesville traveled really, really well today.
Unbelievably well.
And Coach Calignan knew that Marquette was going to travel nearly as well. But this was absolutely a Marquette Catholic road game, and you could have heard a pin drop in Gainbridge Fieldhouse with what happened with Hadley. And so I think collectively as a girls basketball community, extending outside of Lanesville, keep her in your thoughts and prayers. And Hadley, there were, sometimes things like this happen and they're very confusing, but I don't know you personally, but I do know that you're going to come out stronger for this. And I think we learned a lot about that Lanesville team as an outfit and as a team. But I think people are going to talk about you just as much now with what happened than if you had come out and gotten 22. I think it doesn't take away from anything that you did all year. She was fantastic, but all of our hearts are broken. And so, Hadley, you're in our thoughts and prayers.
Real quick, here's Hadley Crozier following the game with during the press conference.
I was on the bench, and then I kind of found myself like feeling sorry for myself, and I was like, these girls are doing this, and I can't think about me because this is for everybody. This is our community, and yeah, I went down, and I probably won't be back for a while, but these girls, I just couldn't be any more proud of them and what they went out there and did.
She'll be back. Shelby was in the same place. We have a great trainer, and he'll have her working out today when we get home. He'll already be working with her. And, the type of kid that she is, she will be back. She will be back better and stronger, and we all have faith in that.
Shelbyville Junior, Hadley Crozier and Coach Angie hitting after the game. Crozier goes down early, and it's just like, uh-oh, what's going to happen here? And I tell you what, you mentioned the senior Ava Kerr stepping up. In the press conference, they talked a lot about Hilton Brumley, who Hadley, and I just love this fun fact. She owes some crab too. Okay. They made a deal as hotel roommates, they revealed afterwards. But I mean, Hilton Brumley, 0 turnovers after the first quarter against a Marquette defense that was all over them.
Yeah.
They did a phenomenal job defensively. Those are the two that I want to start with before we get to Shelby Allen and her comeback. What did you see from Ava Kerr?
So Coach actually talked about it in her on-court post-game interview. She talked about Hadley Crozier was kind of the head of their defense, I think was her particular quote. We all week have discussed how Hadley Crozier kind of sets the tone and sets the tempo in that matchup zone and how it rotates, and they really play off of her. So when you lose Hadley Crozier and the ability to play off of her, you would expect a team to be completely out of sorts. But Ava Kerr and Hilton Brumley at the point of that amoeba zone, I think, rotated really well. And I'm sure, we'll have Coach on sometime in the week to ask her the specifics about it. But I'm sure they had to dumb some of the rotations down. But Ava Kerr on the defensive side was fantastic. And I didn't think that they missed a beat because I thought they kept Marquette Catholic very unbalanced. I thought Lanaya Davis had a hard time getting in space. And then if you notice late in that basketball game too, and I know obviously I'm not in the press conferences, so I didn't have a chance to ask anybody, but it looked like they were in almost kind of a box and one kind of look.
They did. They switched to a triangle and 2, I think, at the end.
Okay, so it was triangle and 2. And that's in that sort of situation when it's a 1, 2, 3 possession basketball game and Lanaya Davis is on the floor. I think she, what did Lanaya? If she finished with 16 points, I think she's averaging 19. She tried to take that thing over, but Ava Kerr standing in her way, making everything difficult, really just eliminated her ability to do so. Ava Kerr deserves her flowers because she was fantastic, and she would have been just as good if Hadley Crozier was on the floor. But in that moment, when you lose Hadley Crozier and to be able and have to do things that you didn't work on in practice all week, props to her. They're state champs because of her performance in the second half, particularly on the defensive side.
Angie Hinton of her defense, she said, I can't explain to you what our defense is because it changes every game and it has different players stepping up. So that speaks to the Amoeba Zone that we're going to get on T-shirts at some point. Purple Amoeba Zone T-shirts, I think, is just the perfect way to do it. But, I mean, just, going back to the mental resiliency is unbelievable. And then Shelby Allen, I mean, she was a force in the paint for Lanesville. I mean, whenever they needed a bucket, they turned to her. There was a little stretch during the third quarter where Marquette Catholic finally managed to take her out of the game a little bit. She picked up that third foul at the elbow in the paint, but then after that, I mean, she came back in and she was back on in the fourth quarter. She finishes with 20 points, and she herself is a cool comeback story because she had the knee injury 2 weeks after last year's state championship game. She comes back midway through this year, around December 29th, I think it was. I just written that down for a story that you'll be able to find on the Star here soon. But yeah, I mean, she was unbelievable. She has been all season, and we talked about it during the week in that close games against Borden and North Central Farmersburg during the regular season blew them out in the postseason. What was the difference? It was Shelby Allen. And just having her back out there. And when they're moving up to 2A2, just looking down the line, having a weapon like that, it's just unbelievable. And it's going to give them an edge over a lot of teams. Yeah.
Marquette Catholic and Coach Collignan decided because Shelby Allen hurt them in the first half. I think she had 10 first half points, maybe a dozen even. They had somebody connected to Shelby Allen all during the second half. So she always had somebody on her backside. They always had somebody connected to her. They were pushing her off her spot and had a very difficult time getting her going offensively. When she went to the bench with her third foul late in the second half, I thought Marquette Catholic looked like they were going to establish themselves in this basketball game. I thought they looked very, very comfortable. I thought they were starting to get Lanaya Davis in space. They were starting to figure out how they could attack it and where the gaps were going to rotate from. But when she came back, I think there were some schematic things that Coach Hilton and Lanesville did where they would almost throw the ball into the post when Marquette Catholic extended into their odd front 1-3-1. There was one particular play which made it a 6-point game where Shelby Allen kind of sealed late and they threw over the top, which eliminates backside help. That was a really good adjustment and a really good look by Lanesville to say, we're not going to get anything in dead ball change and quarter court defense for Shelby Allen, so we have to be able to throw the ball to her in transition, and they did, and she hurt her. But she was really good.
Shifting over to Marquette Catholic, Coach Katie Collignan mentioned afterwards, I think the referees told her that this was the most physical they'd seen anybody play. Allen, which I guess I didn't fully understand the context of it, but it was just kind of like a good job. And she was like, I wish we would have gotten some of the foul calls, honestly. But I mean, that's just a testament. And we talked about it during the week. They kind of reflect their coach and just the energy and the confidence that they bring in the youth. And I think to some extent it hurt them a little bit early on, even after they come out and hit the 3 threes right away, which was just an incredible start. I think it hurt them a little bit there in the middle and maybe a little bit towards the end with some of the missed free throws and stuff. But you got to tip your cap because even without Brumley on the floor, without Crozier on the floor, I mean, that's still a really good Lanesville team. You know what I mean? Like they're deeper than one player, unlike most 1A teams. Same as Marquette Catholic is obviously, but I mean, that's still, even when Crozier went out, it's like, okay, it still felt like there were times when Lanesville was going to start running away with it, start taking control of it, and they never let them. Marquette Catholic never let them do that with their defense. The big bugaboo tonight, though, was the free throws and the turnovers, and that's what Coach Collignan talked about after the game. Is just couldn't get over that hump with the turnovers, couldn't get over the hump with the missed free throws, and it cost them in the end a very close game.
Yeah, it did. I like the scheme and what they had. So Crozier, when Lanesville would present the zone initially, most of the time they did the same thing in the semi-state championship against North Central Farmersburg. They like to extend Hadley Crozier. You also saw it when they played Borden in the sectional semifinal. They would extend and Hadley would pick up in the full court. Well, number 3, Shavis, I think is how you pronounce her last name. She is actually their point guard. So they were throwing the ball up in pitch action early in the game to Lanaya Davis. And that was taking their best defender in Hadley Crozier and putting her in back pursuit. And so it was a nice little wrinkle that Marquette Catholic had early. What Lanesville has to do in that instance when Lanaya is in space with their best defender behind her is they obviously have to suck the defense in. That's when it's really important to have a kid like Pleasant make shots. Mm-hmm. And Pleasant hits 3 threes early. And when she hit those 3 threes early, I'm sure Katie and Marquette Catholic was like, this is absolutely perfect. This is exactly what we want. We have Lanaya in space. Crozier is trailing. We're throwing strikes to the shooters. We're putting them on the net. And she had 11 points in the first quarter. It was a great start by Marquette Catholic, but a nice adjustment by Lanesville to really kind of soften the pressure mm-hmm. and change their pickup point to a little bit later. And that's where, again, we keep going back to Ava Kerr and what she was able to do.
Lanaya Davis finishes with 16 points. She cleared 1,000 for her career, by the way. I think it was in the third or fourth quarter, which is incredible for a sophomore. She also had 12 rebounds, but also you had to mention the 9 turnovers, which were a factor. They're not all her fault, but it happened. Balling with 12 points, and then, like we mentioned, Pleasant had a great game herself as well. 12 rebounds, I'm sorry for balling, 12 points, 13 points from Marissa Pleasant.
Yeah. I think they had 19 steals, I think I heard, and set a state championship record. Did I hear that correctly over the PA?
You heard the 19 steals right, and that sounds like a record.
It sounds like a lot.
Yeah.
Most of those were after Crozier went out, too. Mm-hmm. And, again, I don't think you can talk about a kid too much in this sort of setting and to be able to play in the state championship. But, and Ava, don't be mad at me for bringing this up, but, Ava Kerr was 1 for 12 from the field. Okay. Yeah. So let's remember that while she was so effective on one end of the floor, it's all concurrently happening with it had to be one of her roughest offensive basketball games. I think that speaks to the mental fortitude of this mm-hmm. basketball team. And I think that encapsulates what we will remember from this game is losing Hadley Crozier, but then also these mini episodes of having kids contributing on the defensive end when they're going through a tough time on the offensive end. And mm-hmm. I don't, again, I've never played in the state championship. That has to be impossible to do.
Yeah.
So congratulations for Ava Kerr and the rest of Lanesville for compartmentalizing all of these things and being able to make plays.
And then Brumley too. Running point, like we talked about, minimizing the turnovers is just unbelievable. And then another thing too, with Marquette Catholic, I forget the point. I started it and then I forgot it. Defensively, that third quarter, what they did, where they just kind of grinded and they kept Lanesville field goal free, and that's what kind of got them back in the game. Like, it wasn't the prettiest half or quarter for anybody on the floor, but to do that and then to be in that position. And it was interesting talking afterwards, and I'll have the full quotes and a follow-up on Monday or Sunday. But just Marquette Catholic, they talked about how it hurt more kind of than they're expecting. And I think it's because you come that close. You know what I mean? And we're all going to say, I'm going to say it, I'm going to write it, that they're going to be back. They're going to be back to this point this year, but nothing's ever guaranteed. Like Coach talked about it with Crozier. She goes out a week or two earlier, they may not be playing for a state championship.
It's true.
So the same thing applies to Marquette Catholic. And while it's sunflowers and rainbows in the future for them, it really does sting, and your heart hurts for them, because it's like they were so close and they had the defending champs on the ropes and they were that close to knocking them off there. What would have been a bigger surprise than if Browntown Central won, and what will be a bigger surprise than any of the other 3 games, including Lake Central, Lawrence Central.
That's right. That's absolutely right. I think, yes, Marquette definitely, and again, I hate to put in this context, but, after the Crozier injury and after the good start, I think they just had to feel in that basketball game that it was theirs. They had several leads in the basketball game, and Lanesville answered every single one of them. Just championship medal to be able to make plays and to keep that close without Crozier. To be able to change your identity too. To turn into a basketball team that plays centrally through Shelby Allen, I think is important. But let's also remember too that we talked about it last week in the after the semi-state championship game. Lanesville at times always plays through Allen. They just had to do it for an entire basketball game where, they didn't have the luxury of Crozier being able to make a play on the defensive side. But that was in there. That scheme and being able to play through her, and that made a difference because if you go back and watch that fourth quarter, in the third quarter she sat out the majority of it because she picked up that third foul, but she was the focal point of Lanesville's offense and Marquette Catholic's defense. She affected every possession without even sometimes touching the basketball with the way that the zones rotated and things like that. So, but Shelby Allen, what she finished with, had to finish with a double, right?
Yeah, I think she had double. I'll pull up the stats here. 20 points for sure.
What
for
an
her.
awesome game.
Yeah. See, 20 points, 7 rebounds, and assists for Shelby Allen, team high. Or game high for her, and she kind of talked about afterwards that she'd never be dreaming of this. I think it tweeted out the clip, and she talked about rodeo too, and was asked to compare them. So it's kind of cool how these kids, their differing interests on there. Final thoughts for you from this game before you jump up to 2A.
Yeah, no, I think my final thought would have been this, and I was actually just trying to fiddle through your stats here. I want to say it was Jane Davis. Somebody hit a big three that we didn't hear from, maybe. But sometimes like in baseball, they say the ball finds you, right? Mm-hmm. Well, it's very similar in basketball too, where maybe you feel uninvolved at times. Go to the game stats. There's got to be a kid that probably. I want to say it was Jane Davis.
It was.
But Jane Davis.
5:09 left in the fourth.
5:09 left in the fourth quarter.
Breaks a 35-all tie.
That's it. Like that's a one shining moment, big time play. And that's the first time that we mentioned in the post game here talking about Jane Davis. It was all about Ava Kerr. It was all about Hadley Crozier. It was all about Shelby Allen. But here's Jane Davis, who the first time I ever watched Lanesville play a basketball game on stream, she was a kid that hit like 3 threes in that game, and then just didn't have her moment. And her moment found her. She was open on the wing. She had the confidence, and she put it on the net, and they never trailed again after that.
Unbelievable.
Awesome.
Unbelievable. Championship team making championship plays is all it is. And like I said, I mean, you're excited for Marquette Catholic. They'll be back here. But, I mean, just what Lanesville did today is unbelievable.
Yeah, and congratulations to Marquette Catholic. I stick with your coach, Katie, on that. She looked like she'd been here 2 times prior.
Yeah, wasn't that awesome?
She just did. The way she argued calls, the way that she was clapping at certain times, and I have a propensity to watch coaches as a coach myself. And sometimes you can just tell by body language if they expect the game flow, if they expect certain things within the game flow.
Yeah.
And everything that she was clapping at the right times, she wasn't complaining to her team very much. They had a good plan. They executed it. Lanesville was just better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were great. And then the composure thing came in there as well. I'll dive into that with the Monday follow. The 2A game, my gosh. Bishop Luers 44, Brownstown Central 36. I kind of felt caution myself. Like there's something about that Brownstown Central team where they picked off Linton Stockton.
You guys called it.
They picked off Eastern Hancock. And I picked Luers, but it felt like a game that was going to be a lot closer maybe than people were giving it credit for just because of the way that Brownstown Central plays. And I mean, man, they gave them a run for their money. It felt like they were leading in control all the way up until kind of that fourth quarter when things really started to teeter out of control, and then Luers took control and pulled away.
Yeah, I feel bad. I'm happy that Brownstown Central was able to make it competitive, and I missed that. I thought Luers would dominate the glass. They did.
I did too. Yeah,
they did not. I thought they would get a ton of second chance points. They did not. The one thing that Brownstown Central did was we knew that they were going to make it a point to have 60 to 75 second possessions, and they were going to wait for their shot. But they didn't make them.
Yeah.
And basketball is still, and even at the highest levels in the NBA, it's still a make or miss game. And when you're not making shots, it is really, really difficult. But Brownstown Central finished 2 for 22 from the field, from the 3-point line. And they didn't need to be 11 for 22.
Yeah. They
didn't need to have a dream. They were good enough. They had looks. They just didn't make them. And sometimes that's basketball. And some of them were really good looks. But at the end of the day, I thought Brownstown Central had the right game plan in place. I thought they executed it really well. I thought they could have knocked them off. They just didn't make shots.
Held them to 1 point. Brownstown Central was to 1 point over the last 7:03.
Incredible.
0 field goals during that stretch. And that's a compliment to Luers and what they did. And after seeing them and their 2 posts and the guards, I'm a believer.
Yeah.
Like, my goodness.
Yeah. So Luers was really impressive. And to transition to them, I thought they did a good job of just staying with who they were. They continued to play through Waring, and there was a spot there at the beginning of the third quarter, the end of the third quarter and beginning of the fourth quarter, where they seemed to have every offensive possession run through Waring. They were always looking for, they were getting her touches, and even in the first half, Waring would catch the basketball and she'd kick it right out right away. So it was pretty clear that they were going to play through her. They continued to do that late. There was a play in the middle of the third quarter where Lures was down by 1 point, and they played through Waring again. And the people that I was watching the basketball game with, I said, this is clear. They're going to play through Waring this entire rest of the half, the rest of the game, okay? And they throw the ball to Waring. She misses a layup, and instead of getting the offensive rebound, Brownstown Central controls the defensive rebound, but Waring ties it up. Sure as heck, that's the TV timeout. So now Lures gets a baseline out of bounds, out of a TV timeout. They convert beautifully on that special, which was, I'm sure, put in right at that timeout. They get a basket. They take a 1 point lead, and they never trail again. It just kind of proves that, again, although the statistical output might not be what you thought it was going to be on the defensive side or on the offensive glass, it was an offensive rebound tie-up, which made kind of the turning point play of the game. And then furthermore, there was the baseline out of bounds with Brownstown Central, where Lures actually turned them over, and then they got a layup and made it a 5 point lead. So those little stoppages of play in a state championship game with TV timeouts proved to be really important in a two-way game.
It's fascinating too. Some of the kids who've been here before, like the Lanesville kids talking to beforehand, they talked about those TV timeouts that need to be something you adjust to and figure out how to handle. And I'm sure it's true for coaches as well. But Lures handled them to perfection, like you mentioned. Their post really showed out. They did a good job defensively. Just an impressive game. And again, just wasn't expected to be that close. So you got to tip your cap to Brownstown Central. Yeah,
Lures did a nice job, I think, defensively in the second half. Let's not say that 2 for 22, that Brownstown Central was just standing unguarded at the 3 point line.
Right.
When Brownstown Central would play through the middle against either of the zones that Lures would present to them, and sorry if our audio is bad, they're deciding to vacuum in the suite next to us, but they stayed home. They stayed home on the wings, and I think that was an important detail to have. If you suck in, now your shoulders are square, you have 10 toes facing the basket, inside out catch and release threes, you typically shoot with higher percentage. I just didn't think they got good quality, and that's a credit to the Lures defense in being able to stay home and kind of shade to shooters.
Waring finishes with 17 points, 10 rebounds, and an assist. Davis gets the 10 points, 5 assists for her. On the other side, for Brownstown Central, Toppy with 10 points. She was really good, too, by the way.
Yes, she was.
Wishmeyer, 11 points for her, 8 rebounds. And the rebounding differential was 26-23 in favor of Lures, and offensive rebounds were 10-8 in favor of Brownstown Central. And if you would have told me that going in, that would have been happening, I would have told you Brownstown Central is going to shock the world and win that game.
Yeah, I know it.
Maybe not shocked, surprised, mildly surprised.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Annika Davis's 10 points. We talked a lot about her leading up this week. About how good she was and about how she was productive. I would have to stat check me, and somebody would check me on this, but I believe all 10 of Annika Davis's points came in the first half, where there was clear that Brownstown Central wasn't going to let Shank and Waring beat them. Now, Waring ended up beating them, but Annika Davis has to be offensively productive in that sort of scenario to be able to loosen up the defense. It's just basic basketball, right? If you're going to leave me open, I have to make shots. And then when I make shots, then I can play through Waring and Shank, and they did. And the game flow was a very typical basketball game flow.
5 points in the first quarter for Annika Davis. Then she had her next 5 in the third quarter when she also registered 3 of her assists, had a rebound. Really big third quarter for her as well.
Yep.
Final thoughts on that 2A championship.
Lures was able to maintain. I thought they showed very good patience with their identity. Brownstown Central had a good plan. Okay, they were playing through short corner. They were diving into the middle. They were looking for the kick once they got the ball into the middle. They just didn't make shots. But in the end, you have to rebound the basketball. You have to guard them. I think they held Brownstown Central to 10 or 12 second half points. Yep. Like that is stingy defense. And then they played through Waring. They played through who they were. And leading up all week, we had said their size. And although their size didn't dominate in the fashion that I probably thought that it would, particularly on the rebounding side, it's exhausting for these kids like Klosterman and kids like that to just have to bang against Waring every time they're catching the basketball. Yeah. But for them to stay with their identity and say, this is who we are. It might not be working right now, but we will make plays if we continue to play through Shank and Waring. They did.
24-15 lead after the first half by Brownstown Central. It didn't fully rock in because I was working on the Crozier story, but 3 points in the second quarter for Bishop Luers, and then they just flipped the script, outscored them 19-7 in the third, 10-5 in the fourth, with again just the 1 point down the stretch.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Impressive game for there. We've talked about them at length a little bit, but we might as well while we're here touch on 3A, 4A.
Oh yeah, sure.
Let's pick a key for both games. I'll let you start. We'll start with 3A. One key.
I think the key in the 3A basketball game is going to be Gibson Southern's ability to handle the 1-3-1. Mm-hmm. We saw it against Noblesville. We see it all the time against Lawrence Central. But if they can commit to and find shooters like Spink and Graham, or even playing through the middle with Schnaus, if they can handle that 1-3-1, I think that's going to lead them to. Gibson, I think that's going to be a big advantage for Gibson Southern. For Norwell, okay, I think it's going to be their ability to get Felling and Thies free. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be surprised to see some sort of face guard. I wouldn't be surprised to see some sort of box zone. I wouldn't be surprised to see something that where Gibson Southern says, I'm not going to allow Kennedy Felling or Thies to beat us. And I think those kids have to remain patient. And if they can, if through the normal course and the normal game flow, get them shots, they'll make them. But I think they've got to be patient because I think Gibson Southern is going to make it hard. Absolutely.
We'll be interested to see what Paige Schnaus is able to do. And I think you're right. I think this game is going to come down to that 1-3-1 press.
Yeah, it is.
And Gibson Southern's ability to handle it. And I was talking to Kyle Soakland, who's been on the show before. I talked to him beforehand and what the vibe was on Gibson Southern. And the big thing he pointed to, the coach has been pointing to, that Evansville Memorial game is kind of the most recent time that they've seen that type of press. But Memorial got out of it once Gibson Southern started hitting some baskets. I'm not sure if Norwell abandoned it at any point. We'll see. I don't know. And then on the other side, 4A, I mean, it's boring, but it really is. I think at least it's going to come down to Lake Central's ability to take care of the ball against LC's length and athleticism and all the other stuff. Let them get their points. Just don't turn it over and give them extra opportunities to get their points.
Yep. I think that's an obvious one. If Sabe was here, he'd tell you the same thing. In the first quarter and the first half, is Lake Central getting their passes deflected? Let me add another one to it, though. Lawrence Central, they have a propensity to make runs. And the one thing that's really good about Lawrence Central is they extend their runs. The runs don't punctuate at 6 to 8 points. No. They get 13, 14, 15-2 runs. I think Lake Central's ability when things start to get a little crazy and Lawrence Central's out there deflecting the basketball and the Lampleys are out there taking one bounce and laying it in, and can they limit that run? Can they get to the free throw line? Can they get a good look? Can they control the tempo? I think that's going to be a big thing because I don't think in a game like this against Lawrence Central, I don't think you can let them get off on a 13-0 run, because if you get a 13-0 run, game's too short.
Yep. And like Lake Central has that team aspect, Lawrence Central brings the star power. It's going to be a great game. I think these two games are going to be phenomenal. The first two were any indication, we're in for a great day.
That's what I'm banking on too. I mean, it's just, you see Brownstown competing in a game that I maybe didn't think that they were going to be able to compete in. So, somebody I was watching the game with actually said to me, they were like, hey, we'll see if Lake Central can do the same thing.
Absolutely. Well, that's it for us. We're here for the first two games. We'll be back tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern to talk about the final two games. So we thank you all so much for watching, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.